Welcome to Septic Systems 101. I am your presenter, Sally Dolan, and so I just want to welcome everyone. Today's webinar is hosted by the Illinois State Water Survey at the University of Illinois, and the private well class is sponsored, funded, and supported by the Rural Community Assistance Partnership and the U.S. EPA. So to get started here, we will just go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get into the webinar. The first thing that I want to point out is that we do have NEHA CEUs available for the webinar today. Just keep in mind that you can only submit once per credentialing cycle. So you can't take this course more than once during your credentialing cycle. So the example we give is that if your cycle started on July 1st, if you take it this year, you're not eligible to submit it again for CEs until June 30th of 2026. Our last two webinars were on August 4th, 2022 and July 12th, 2023. If you need a certificate of attendance, a copy of the slide deck, any forms, anything like that, just let us know. And then we are also registered with the state of Illinois to get LEHP CEs as well. We do have a couple of handouts today, so if you check out the handouts, we have a worksheet, an agenda, and the completion record if you need that. So the private well class is part of a national program that is brought to you by RCAP through the funding for the U.S. EPA. We follow our free well owners course, which is a 10-lesson course that is free to homeowners to learn more about their wells. This webinar will also be recorded and available at the privatewellclass.org and our YouTube channel. And then keep in mind that we always leave time at the end for questions, so don't hesitate to put any questions you have in the question box. So now I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and we're going to have a poll question to get started.
Thanks, Sally. So I'm going to launch a poll question, and we just want to know what role best describes you today as a participant on our webinar. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch that. Now, I do realize that you may fit into one or more of these categories, but just go ahead and select the role that best describes you. And we'll give everybody a few moments to go ahead and complete that. And the reason that we like to poll the audience for this information is we want to know what kind of individuals are viewing our webinar, just so we have an idea of who our audience is on each type of webinar that we host. And we host webinars once a month, and they're on a variety of topics. So just go ahead and, if you will, I see some people may have put their role into the chat question or the chat or question box, but go ahead and just click the poll question response if you can. So we have 88% voted, so I'll give everybody 5 more seconds. Go ahead and select your answer, and I will close the poll, and then I will share the answers. We have 90% have voted. Poll is closing. All right, I'm going to share the answers. It looks like we're pretty well balanced amongst at least amongst 4 of the different options that we have today. So thank you for participating in that. I'm going to hide the poll results, and then Sally, I'll give it back to you.
Sounds good. Okay, so today I want to do a special welcome to Jim Starbird. He's our expert panelist who's going to be helping with the questions section at the end. So I just really appreciate that he took his time out of his day to join us. Jim is the regional director for Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island for RCAP Solutions, and he spent 7 years as a health inspector. I'm Sally Dolan. I spent 4 years as a health inspector, and so I'm an REHS and a licensed environmental health practitioner for the state of Illinois. And I'm an environmental public health specialist here at the Illinois State Water Survey. Many of you who have been on these programs before are very familiar with Steve Wilson, our program director. Steve is traveling today, so unfortunately he wasn't able to join us. And then we have Katie Buckley, who I'm going to call our CE guru. She is the one who makes sure that all the CEs get um, sent to you after each and every one of our webinars. So as I've mentioned, we work in partnership with RCAP, and RCAP is 6 partners across the nation. So since I'm in Illinois, I'm actually would be part of the Great Lakes Community Action Partnership. So this could be a good resource for you. So find the office that would fit the state that you live in, and they would be a good resource for you. I've stated that I'm at the Illinois State Water Survey, and the Illinois State Water Survey was actually founded in 1895 in response to cholera and typhoid outbreaks. So it got its start in public health. So we're really excited that all these years later, we're still providing the same message for people. Steve always includes this picture in his webinars, and I absolutely love it. It says, "It is believed that any 14-year-old boy of average intelligence and mechanical ingenuity can, by following these plans, build a sanitary privy for his home." And I think this is just a great representation of not only how a 14-year-old schoolboy has changed, but also how we view waste management and how our homes are developed. Since the water survey does have such a deep historical background, this is actually a photo of the septic tank that was used when Urbana, Illinois was first being developed. So I think this picture was taken around 1915. So you can see that, you just have the large tank there in the ground that they used for their septic system back in the day. So today's topic, we are going to be going over septic systems, and that is a major home purchase. And so to kind of get us started off, I thought that we would do a little Andy Griffith show. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's just a cute little clip to get us started for the day.
Hey Sally, I don't know if the volume is turned on for the video or
Oh,
not.
you guys can't hear it?
I can't from my end, but okay.
Well, I'll give you the little snippet of it. Barney is about to make a big purchase in his life. And he says he hasn't bought anything this big since his parents' anniversary present. And so he gets asked, "What did you get them?" And he says, "I bought them a septic tank. They're really hard to buy for, and it's something I knew they would actually use." So it's just a fun way of showing that it is a major purchase and it is something that will be used every day. So it's something that you really need to put your attention to so you don't ruin this major home investment that you have. So why is it important to treat wastewater? Well, there's 4 different groups of contaminants in sewage that we need to be concerned with. We have the pathogens, so the viruses and bacteria, things that can make you sick. You have the solids, nutrients like nitrogen and phosphate, and then any chemicals that get added, whether it's cleaning products or personal care items. So you have to make sure that your septic system is properly designed and installed and is operating and maintained correctly to make sure that you have an economical and effective treatment for your wastewater so you're not accidentally contaminating any of the source water near you. On the public health side of things, maintaining your septic system is very important. Many old systems are no longer considered acceptable. So, it used to be that you would have just, a pipe that went from your house out to the creek in the backyard, or you would dump it into a field tile, or you might have a cesspool. And as we've learned more over the years, we realize that this has a huge impact on the environment. And in most places, all of these have been now deemed illegal and you're not allowed to install them anymore. And so, we use that information to understand the ground flow direction and realize that it's really important that you take care of your septic system so you're not affecting your neighbor's well, or vice versa, your neighbor needs to take care of their septic system so they don't accidentally contaminate your well. And of course, the depth of your well, where your water enters the well, all plays a major part in that. If you have a shallow well, it's going to be a lot more vulnerable than if you have a well that's 300 feet below the ground. When it comes to definitions, you'll see on-site wastewater treatment systems are starting to become a very popular term. And that's kind of just the generic overall term for systems that rely on natural processes and or a mechanical component that it's treating the wastewater coming out of dwellings, buildings, and structures. And so it's this big, broad overview term. Where a septic system refers to an individual system. So a septic system only is serving one dwelling or facility. It's not covering multiple ones. And that's very important for our society because more than 1 in 5 households in the US depends on a septic system. These definitions actually came from one of the NAURA resources. So I would like to draw your attention that NAURA has done a great job of creating a glossary. So if you're unfamiliar with septic terms, it's a good way for you to get an understanding of those terminology. So what goes into your septic system? You've heard of black water and gray water, I'm sure. Well, black water just refers to water that contains a pathogen that may spread by the fecal oral route and can cause human illness. So that's why the toilets and any water used for food prep are included in black water, where gray water just may have some soaps from the washing machine or from the bathtub, but it doesn't have those pathogens nearly as much as from the toilet or for food prep areas. When it comes to your system, it's divided up into 4 components. You have your plumbing and collection, pre-treatment, advanced treatment, and final treatment and dispersal. With the plumbing and collection, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's your piping that's going to collect all that black water and gray water and send it down into your pre-treatment. The pre-treatment is going to be your septic tank. Whenever your wastewater comes into your septic tank, it's going to divide kind of into 3 layers. Those fats, oils, and grease, commonly known as fog, are going to float to the surface and create a scum layer. Your solids are going to settle out into the bottom and create the sludge. And then that liquid in between those 2 layers is called your effluent. And the effluent is what's going to flow out of your septic tank and go into the next treatment, whether it's an advanced treatment or if it goes into a drain field. So I think this is a really good drawing because it helps you where you can imagine, your sewage contractor comes over, they pop off the lid to your riser, and then they, put their stick down, and they're going to be measuring to see how much scum and sludge are in there to determine when the right time to pump your tank out. Now, then, next step would be advanced treatment. Not all systems are going to have an advanced treatment on them. Advanced treatment will be for unsuitable sites and soils. So um, if you have a tight clay that you can't have a drain field, then you're going to need an advanced treatment that will help um, break down the material in a different way than using the natural drain field. So the one pictured here is an aerobic treatment unit. So you'll just see that they have an air pump where they're providing oxygen for the bacteria to really grow and work a little more efficiently than in just a standard septic tank. So these are nice because these different treatments allow us to provide septic systems for individuals who in the past may not have been eligible to have one. And so the advanced treatments include things like ATUs, media filters, and constructed wetlands. Then after it goes through all those treatments, then it goes into the final treatment and dispersal. Um, the most common in the conventional septic system would be the soil treatment area will be that drain field or leach field. So it'll come out of the house, goes through the septic tank, then it gets distributed through the D box into the different trenches of your drain field, where it will then slowly go down through the treatment zone. Um, the bacteria will naturally get stuck to the soil particles and it just naturally gets filtered out. So by the time it gets all the way down to the groundwater, um, most of that will have already been resolved and you should have a good clean product by the time it gets to the groundwater. The standard for the level of soil that you have to have before you have a limiting layer is typically 2 to 3 feet deep. But all of that is based off of your local regulations. And the local regulations will look at your area and will determine what is best for your area. So the rules in Illinois, where I live, will be much different than a state like Massachusetts or Florida, where the geology is different. Next, we'll get into design and sizing. Design and sizing is not a one fits all category. You have to look at each and every site on its own to determine how it needs to be designed and how it needs to be sized. I've seen subdivisions where the homes side by side, they each have to do a little bit different design, or some may have to do a radically different design because the way that, you know, the household size, the soil type, one may be on a slope where the other has a huge corner lot where they have plenty of room where they can put multiple drain fields and have a backup, so to speak. So you have these different 7 criteria that you really have to look at with each and every site to make sure that you are meeting the needs of that particular house. Luckily, whenever you are doing design, since it's not a one fits all, there are many, many types of septic systems that are now available. So you have your traditional, conventional system with the septic system and the drain field, but now we have a lot of alternatives that you can use. So, you could do a constructed wetland or a sand filter. Maybe you have an area where all the homes need, put on a cluster system because there's not the room for each of them to go on their own separate. So I'm not going to get too much into the different types, but if you do want more information, I highly suggest that you go to the EPA Septic website, and they actually have a nice little description of the different treatment systems, so you can get some more information there. When it comes to systems, they can range from very simple to very, very complex, and it all depends on rules that you have locally, how many people are living there, the soil type, and all those things that we just mentioned. If you're lucky and you can have a conventional system, that is by far the easiest, but other people aren't so lucky and they have to do a more complex system. So the one that I have pictured here, this is actually the engineered drawings to a system. And so if you look at the picture behind the trees, you can kind of see that there's the glistening of something. That's actually Lake Superior. So this home was actually built within 100 feet of the shore of Lake Superior. So they have some very stringent rules that they had to follow to be able to build their cabin here. So what you can see is as the wastewater leaves the home, it goes into a 1,500-gallon septic tank. It is then pumped uphill to these two peat pod units. So the black lids are the peat pod units. And then to the right of the peat pods, you have a secondary septic tank that is 500 feet. And so the water will cycle between the peat pods and that secondary tank until it gets treated. And then it goes into a geotextile sand filter before it eventually is released into the watershed of Lake Superior. And the peat pods, the secondary tank, and the sand filter are all built on a mound system. So it is an extremely high complex system, but it does come with a great view. So while it was a lot of money to get it installed, the owner of the property fell in love with the view and was willing to put the commitment into the septic system because it does require constant maintenance, and he has to have a lot of things in place, including a contract where people are coming out and regularly monitoring it. So next, Katie, we're going to do our quiz. So we'll do our next poll question. Now, this is a home that I went out and visited, and I'm sure anyone that has some septic inspection can see that there's a problem here. If you notice on the right-hand side of the picture, you have these bright green stripes where the rest of the yard is brown. So we're just going to do a little poll question here to see what you think is going on in this situation. So Katie, if you'll do the poll.
Sure thing. I will launch the poll. The question here is, what happened to the pictured drain field? Just pick the option you think best answers the riddle. There is one correct answer, right, Sally?
Correct.
Okay. We'll give everybody a few moments to go ahead and answer. I do also see that some people are putting their answers in the question/chat box. Just go ahead and select the best answer in the poll. You don't have to put your response in the chat box, unless of course your poll questions aren't popping up and you're not able to answer through that route. Okay, we have 78% have voted. We'll give everybody 5 more seconds. All right, Sally, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and I will share the answers. Okay, it looks like about 50% of the attendees on the webinar today said that the addition plus the extra people overloaded the system, which resulted in failure.
And they are correct. That is exactly what happened in this situation. It was a blended family. The husband and wife got married and they moved into the home that needed 2 more bedrooms, so they added 2 bedrooms on. It went from most likely just 1 or 2 people to now 5 people were living there. both the husband and wife work from home, so they both do remote work, so they're home all day long. And then they both have adult children, and those adult children come and visit frequently. And so they were completely overloading the system. And so we worked with them to get them in touch with the local health department. And luckily, they do have enough room on their property where putting in a new drain field and a larger septic tank is going to help them get everything resolved.
All right, Sally, I hid the results of the poll now, and you're free to continue on.
Okay, thank you. So, we just had the example there of a septic system failure. So, what causes it? Um, Probably the number one reason is poor maintenance. People don't realize that they have to manage their system. So, if uh, you're not getting your tank pumped regularly, you're putting items down the system that do not belong in your septic system. Um, in the example, you're overloading the system by um, putting too much water into it, or you have a leaky toilet that's running all the time and adding more water to it. Those can be problems as well. Unfortunately, there are some contractors that they don't appropriately design the system, or they install it incorrectly, which causes the homeowners problems. Um, Physical damage, we had one assessment we did that we thought that the problem may have been caused by driving moving trucks over um, the pipe that went from the house to the septic tank. It wasn't the issue in this particular case, but you definitely do not want to drive over your septic system because it can cause a lot of problems, and tree roots will definitely cause you a lot of problems. And then the last thing that I want to mention is biomat formation. You want a biomat formation to form. It's just when it gets too thick, that's when it can become a problem. And there's really no solution other than to put in a new drain field. So, what can you put in your septic tank? I've heard it referred to as the three P's: poop, pee, and paper are the only things that really should go into your septic tank. Um, you want to make sure that you're not putting anything like your cat litter or chemicals, cigarette butts, nothing like that. Um, think of your septic system as a living ecosystem. You have these bacteria that are in there, um, but they can't easily digest a diaper. So things like that, you need to just put those into the trash can. Do not flush those down the toilet. Um, I know there's cases where people are flushing sensitive items because they don't want them found in the trash, but trust me, it's always better just put it in the trash can. Don't put it into the septic system. And then last thing I want to point out is be very careful with what cleaners you're using. Bleach has been determined to be the safest when it comes to your septic system. You want to avoid any harsh ones because, again, this is a living ecosystem. So if you put too harsh of a cleaner, you're going to kill that bacteria, and it's going to cancel out the good that it is doing. So some signs of system failure, like we saw in the picture, that thick, deep green grass growing, um, that is definitely a sign that, you know, you have too many nutrients that are coming up and a lot more water. So that's one of your number one signs. You also may have water that pools in your yard, or I, it may just be next to your yard. If you have a lower elevation next to your yard and you start having water pool, that could be a problem with your septic system. I've heard stories where people have laid sod down, and when you step on the sod, it makes a wave because the water from the septic system has pooled underneath. Um, we're all familiar with the smell, so if you notice any kind of smell, that's always a good time to contact a contractor to have them check out why the system is producing a smell. And then if your well water comes out high with nitrates or coliform bacteria, um, the nitrates and coliform can be coming from whether it's your septic system or a neighboring septic system. So that's why we recommend that you have your well tested once a year for nitrates and coliform bacteria, is so you can keep up and make sure that your septic tank isn't having a problem. And then the last, if you have any kind of gurgling or backup into your home, that can be a sign of failure as well. And the best way to reduce your chances of failure are maintenance by far. So, what can you do as a best practice for maintenance? The number one thing is you want to regularly have your tank pumped. And if you have an effluent filter, make sure they're also cleaning that as well at that same time. If you have them come out regularly, you can get an idea on how you need to spread out your pumping schedule for your system, since again, it's not a one size fits all. You need to have your particular system looked at to know for sure. If you have an advanced treatment, we highly recommend that you have a service contract, and it may actually be required. I know in the state of Illinois, counties are allowed to require that you have a 6-month contract. And so you have to keep on file with the health department a contract showing that someone is coming out and verifying that your advanced treatment is working. I also recommend that you keep your records. This will help show any changes in the system. So if you've always been able to go, 3.5 years and suddenly you're having to have them come pump every 2 years, you can look back at those records and see where the changes occur. It will also help if you go to sell your home. If you have your records, then that adds value to a home with a septic system. We'll go over Septic Smart a little bit later, but it's one of my favorite programs out there, so I'm going to plug it every chance I can. But you want to make sure that if you own a septic system that you're being septic smart. And then just the last thing is septic systems are not made to last forever. They will eventually fail. But the best way to prolong its life is through good management and following those maintenance best practices. Okay, so now we have our septic to-do list. So the things that you can do to help your septic area is you want to maintain the area around it. You don't want to allow trees to grow. Never build on top of your drain field. I actually worked with a private club that they built onto their hall that they have. And when they built the kitchen on, they put concrete over the pipes that went from the kitchen to the septic field. And over time, that concrete started sinking lower and lower and lower, and it actually destroyed the pipes. So then all that wastewater started pooling outside of their hall. They weren't able to use it for events. And so they actually had to go break the concrete out and ended up putting in a new system in the area. So you want to make sure that you only have grass on your field and make sure that you have your inspection ports and your manhole are accessible. I do recommend if you don't have risers, install risers so you can easily access and be checking those levels and having people come out and pump it. If you have to dig it up every time, number one, you're going to have a mess in your yard because you're never going to be able to have grass because every 3 to 5 years you're going to be digging it up. And it just makes it a cleaner and neater way to do it. The next thing is you want to reduce the flow of water into your system. Not only, do you want to check for leaky pipes and staggering use, but you also want to make sure that you're not dumping things like sump pumps, whirlpools, or softener backwash into your septic system. You will need to check with your local regulations and find out what they want you to do with those, whether it's to go into a dry well or they may require it to go into your septic system. So you need to check with your local authority and find out what their rules are for that. You want to make sure that you're only putting wastewater in your septic system. Um, again, those three P's, you really don't need to use additives when it comes to biological. Our bodies produce enough bacteria that you can have a thriving ecosystem without adding anything. If you do have a garbage disposal, ensure that your system was sized for it. That definitely increases the size of your septic system. So never install a garbage disposal on a system that hasn't been sized for it. And then you want to make sure that you don't put any paints or chemicals or medication uh, down into your septic system. I know in our area we have like hazardous recycling days where you can take your paints and your solvents and get those turned into a safe place so you don't feel like you have to put them down your drain. And never put your medications down. If you dump a bunch of antibiotics into your septic system, that's going to kill that bacteria and cause problems. So always ask your pharmacy or doctor about getting your medication recycled as well. And the last thing on my list is, again, we want to make sure that we're regularly checking the tank, measuring the solids, and figuring out a good pumping schedule for your particular system. So I wanted to show you this figure right here. This is from the Pennsylvania State University Cooperative Extension Service. And this is just a nice little guide. Again, it's just an estimation. You need to look at your particular situation to determine your pumping. But you can see that if you have a 15-gallon tank, um, two people, you may be able to go 9.1 years, where if it's a family of four, you're looking at 4.2 years. Um, I know the typical rule of thumb is you tell most people that on average you have to pump a septic tank out every 3 to 5 years. But it all depends on the size of tank, the number of people using it, and your specific situation. Okay, then we have our next poll is, what is the septic resource you use the most? So Katie, if you will do that next poll.
Yep, so I just launched it. We'll give everybody a few moments to put their responses in. The last response here is, if your favorite resource isn't listed, now is the appropriate time to go ahead and throw it in the chat if you wouldn't mind. Give everybody a few more seconds here. We have 78% of the audience having voted. All right, Sally, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I will share the answers.
And Katie, since I can't see the poll results, if you could let me
Oh,
know.
Sure, yeah. So I forgot that you can't view it from your end. So the top response here is local sources such as health departments or cooperative extension. That was 55% of the responses, followed by 34% that said websites such as EPA Septic page and NOWRA's website. Then 18% don't know of any septic resources, and only 4% put their favorite resource in the chat. And there are a few chat responses as well. Someone said local community experts. Someone said privatewells.org. I assume that they meant private well class, potentially. Virginia 610 regulations was another response. The Illinois Private Sewage and Disposal Licensing Act and Code 2013 is the resource that this person uses. KDHE Environmental Health Book. There's a few others in there as well.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm going to go ahead and hide the results and then feel free to continue.
Okay. So as you can see just from that poll, the information is widely available. So, it's depending on the situation, you may need that local help or you may just need something a little more general. So when it comes to local resources, you have a lot of things that are available. You can do the county or local health departments, you can do your cooperative extension. Going to the state level, someone mentioned the IDPH code. I know when I was a health inspector that I had the code printed out in a binder on my desk, and we would go through that to verify everything. So you want to find those local resources. If you don't have any, you don't hesitate to reach out to other professionals in your area, whether it's in your state or, if you need some help, you can even reach out to us. We would be happy to put you in contact with the people that can help you. Another great local resource is your professional septic contractors, the guys that are out there doing this every day, and they're watching and seeing what works, what doesn't work, what's having problems. And so they are a wealth of knowledge and can really help you as well. The number one website that I love to use is the EPA septic web pages. Um, there is so much information on that, so I've actually put together a little video here. Hopefully this video works better than my last video, so um, we will watch this little video. When it comes to resources for septic system owners, environmental health professionals, septic installers and pumpers, and anyone else that has anything to do with septic systems, I cannot recommend coming to the EPA's septic website too much. It has something for everyone, I swear on this. If you go to epa.gov/septic, that is their main site. And from their main site, you'll see that they have 6 sections that are divided up here. The first one is the About page, which does an overview of everything. Earlier in the presentation, I told you that you could come here to find the types of septic systems. If you go there, you'll see that they have all these different systems where they have just a general overview of what each system is so you can learn more about it. And then they also have care and maintenance, so you can find anything that you may have questions about with care and maintenance, including some troubleshooting resources, are all located right here. If you have someone who needs help funding their septic system, or if you yourself are needing help, they have funding sources from the federal, state, tribal, and local. If you go into this, they actually have all the states divided up, and you can find your state and see what funding is available at that point in time. The next section here is Septic Smart. There's actually so much information in this one. I'm going to do a separate video on it, so we'll get to it in a minute. And then you have your partnerships, and then last you have additional resources. So this includes things like manuals and case studies, as well as two clearinghouses to help you get any and every resource you could possibly need. So again, I just really recommend that you visit epa.gov/septic and see what resources you can find to help you in your specific situation. Okay. Katie, am I back to
Yep, it looks
my
great,
regular
Sally.
screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So as you can see, there's so much on the EPA's website. And so I really recommend that you delve into it and look around and see um, what all is available to you because there are a lot of resources on there. One of my favorite things is the Septic Smart Week. I grew up in Southern Illinois on a septic system, and so from a very early age, it was drilled into my head of the rules of having a septic tank. You did not flush anything but the three P's, and my dad made sure that those rules were followed. And it wasn't until I was an adult with my own child that we had our first babysitter come to watch our newborn, and the septic system stopped working um, like 2 days later. And it's like, what in the world is going on? So we had to call a contractor to come out, and he found two or three diapers in the pipe that were causing the problem. And so he looked at me as the mother and said, you shouldn't flush diapers. And I'm like, hey, it was the babysitter. My dad raised me better than that. I know that I don't flush diapers down. And it was at that moment that I realized that not everyone is septic smart. So I really love the Septic Smart program because it makes it a very simple, easy to understand way for homeowners who have septic systems to make sure that they're doing those best practices. So I've just put together another little video going over the Septic Smart. So one great thing that the EPA provides is Septic Smart. And so what they do is 1 week out of the year in September, they dedicate it as Septic Smart Week. And so this is a way to help promote um, to homeowners to take care of their septic systems. And they have done a phenomenal job of creating resources and information to give out to homeowners. So you can either access this page by clicking on this emblem right here, or you can come down to Septic Smart here. For simplicity, we'll just click on our icon here to check out new materials. And this takes you to that web page. So in 2024, it's going to be September 16th to 20th for Smart Week. And so they've already created save the date flyers, created a seal, just to help you start promoting this as early as possible. They have youth challenges where they have kids imagine what septic systems in the future are going to be like. So it's just a lot of fun. So this is a week of fun to just really get people thinking about their septic system and how to take care of them. They divided up into 6 different sections to try and help people have clever little tips so they can remember. For each of the 6, they have created a video. And so they're just short videos explaining how to think at the sink, don't strain your drain, keep it clean, shield the field, protect it and inspect it, don't overload the commode, pump your tank, And then you can even compile all of those videos in one down here at the bottom. So they are great resources where you can show people what they should and should not do for their septic system. They also have where you can have different brochures and flyers that you can send out to people in both English and Spanish so you can try and reach as many of the people as you can. I know we're going to be answering a question later about a new home buyer with a septic system. So something like this new buyer's guide will be a great resource for you. So check these out because there's a lot of information and great things that you can hand out to different constituents or to use for yourself. So I hope you will use these and promote them the best that you can. Okay, so I'm again, the EPA is a great resource. There's so much out there on their website, and I encourage each and every one of you to look into those. And if you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to reach out to us. The next resource that I want to go over is the website for the National On-Site Wastewater Recycling Association, or NOWRA. NOWRA has a wealth of resources. I had never heard of NOWRA until I started working for the private well class, and I just love the fact that there are so many different things that they have available out there that are geared for not only septic professionals, but also for homeowners. So not only do they have the different resources, I just chose the website with the septic resources for homeowners. But if you go under their library, they have a lot of other resources as well. NOWRA also provides educational and training for professionals and homeowners. Some have a cost, some are free. So I encourage you to look at those. They also have, the glossary that I mentioned earlier, which you can see on this page. And then they also do a lot of policy making. So they're on the backside of things, talking to politicians to help spread the word and uh, really be a voice for the wastewater industry. So I encourage you to go to nowra.org and check out their resources. One other resource that I'll point out is Sarah Hager from the University of Minnesota, who we've worked with on some projects, has created an online tool that is for sewage contractors and for homeowners if you need a owner's guide to your septic system. So it's a great resource for sewage contractors because it gives them something they can hand to the homeowner after they do an installation or if they do any repairs. And this gives the homeowner a better understanding of the components of their system. It gives them operation and maintenance tips, as well as, it just gives them something that they can look at and have a hard copy to reference back to. So if you have anyone that has misplaced their guide or they're just needing one, I recommend that you check out this tool. Now, Jim, if you would like to, I would like for you to go over RCAP and what they can do for people.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so RCAP Solutions is a nationwide nonprofit, funded primarily through federal funding, but there is some state funding for some of the affiliates. And as you see on the map, there's 6 different affiliates throughout the country. So every state and every U.S. territory has an RCAP that is working in their area. And we work with a lot of smaller communities, under 10,000 public water and wastewater systems. But we also do a a lot of work with private wells and also septic systems on site. And that could be as much as our well and septic assessments, which will send one of our team members out to meet with the homeowner. Sometimes it's homeowner has a concern with their well and or septic, and sometimes it's just for general knowledge. Some of that can also include well testing of the well, depending on what the contaminants are for the area, to try to make it for the area, test for the the areas of concern in the where the well is. And also there's trainings like this your local affiliates will have in well and septic for homeowners, as well as even I see there's a lot of health professionals on. We do a lot of health professional trainings up here too, and offer CEUs at kind of the local level. And I know you mentioned like now, where we we'll work with the local affiliates up here. I work in out of Massachusetts in the Northeast, and we have a local affiliate of now, or their Northeast affiliate, Yowa, which we'll work with. And also like the National Environmental Health Association, they have local affiliates, and we work a lot with them too. So we try to partner and get the training and resources out to really all aspects of the water and wastewater septic private well world.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
That's all I had.
Thank you. We'll hear more from you whenever we get to the question section. Now, Jim mentioned the assessments. Here, we were actually the ones that worked with RCAP and developed an on-site wastewater treatment system assessment tool. So we actually have those tools available free of charge. You can go to our website. It's a free PDF fillable form. And it was released in September of 2023, and it's really great because it can give you a comprehensive overview of the system at a home. And it creates a nice record for them to have. So, talked about that record keeping was very important. So this is a great tool that you can use to record everything that's going on with their system. And by going through and looking at their system and doing the assessment, it opens up that communication, so you can talk to them and really find out what's going on, if there's any problems or anything that they're unsure about. You can get that covered so they are better prepared to be the owner of the system that they have. This tool can be used as a standalone or used with the well assessment. The well assessment was released in, I think, 2016. So it's had a lot more use than the septic assessment tool. So we do encourage people to use the assessment tool and give us some feedback. We're in the pilot stage right now, so we encourage people to go out and use it. As a former health inspector who I started my career in public health kind of out of a fluke. I applied for a job and got hired, and I had never done anything in public health except for work in a restaurant, where it was specific to public health. My experience translated well, but it wasn't in public health. And so as I was learning the ropes, so to speak, I was thrown into, hey, we got a call, nobody else is available, so go check on this septic complaint. And so I would show up at these houses and not have any idea what was going on. So I actually find that this tool could be really good if you have new employees who aren't very familiar with septic, but we all have to wear many hats when we're in public health. So if you find yourself having to go out to do a septic complaint, I encourage you to take this assessment tool with you, because it will give you step by step on how to get through that and help you get the right questions answered. So I've mentioned that I'm with the private well class, but what is the private well class? The class itself is a free 10-lesson curriculum for private well owners. Anyone can take it, whether or not you have a well, but it goes over a basic overview of everything that a well owner needs to know. So once a week for 10 weeks, you are emailed a lesson. It's self-paced, so you read the PDF at your own leisure and can digest the information as you need to. We also offer these monthly webinars, which we do have CEs available for. And then we also have our partner newsletter. We're on social media, and we also have a YouTube page. And then new this year, starting in April 1st, we started a national private well hotline and a knowledge base to help reach more people out there. So you can visit our website at privatewellclass.org. When you go to our homepage, this is what it looks like. So you can see the green buttons there in the center. You have, visit the Help Center or take our free class. So if you go to take our free class, you can enroll in the class. We do have classes available in Spanish. We just transitioned over to new software, so we don't have the Spanish class available online yet, but if you have someone that wants to take it, just email us at info@privatewellclass.org, and we'll be happy to set you up with those Spanish classes as well. Then I mentioned our Help Center. It started on April 1st and got posted on the EPA's website in May. We've already had over 3,000 people look at the Help Center, and we've been able to help, I think it's around 50 people with unique problems with their wells. So we have over 100 articles divided up into 9 categories. And we have 3 options for helping. You can either search through the articles and find the answers yourself. You can use the chat, which we have programmed the chat bot according to the answers we have provided. Or if you have a very complex problem, or if you just prefer talking to someone in person, you can call our hotline phone number at 866-945-0699. You will most likely get to talk to me, at least at the beginning. I'm the one that manages the hotline. And so we just try and help people get the information. I will say that the articles are very basic. They're broad overviews. And so, we try to encourage that if you do have some specific questions, that you reach out to us by chat or by phone. So far, our biggest comment is, I can't believe I got a real human so quick. So we're doing our best to help those people that are really having problems right now. The private well class also has a YouTube page. So even this webinar will be put out on our YouTube page, so you can view past webinars. We've done multiple other webinars on different topics. And then we also have all of our private well conferences that we've had to date. All of those talks are also available on our YouTube page. And then starting, I think it was in June, I think is when it finally got released, we have a new sister website called decentralizedwastewater.org. And so what this is this is a clearinghouse for events and documents that are specific to the decentralized wastewater industry. So if you have contractors who need their training up or need training to get CEs, we're trying to compile as many resources that we can so we can have those event calendars where they can find training, and then they can also check out our resource documents, and if they have a specific question, try and find a document that will answer those questions. So this is a great resource that has just recently become available to the public. And again, that's decentralizedwastewater.org. And then I also want to take the time to point out that we do have a drinking water podcast. Um, our podcast is not just for private wells, it's for the drinking water industry. And so it does have a search bar. So if you want to go and see if there's a specific topic, you can search that. We have new seasons in the spring and in the fall. So I know the next round should come in September. So go and check that out. I think you'll enjoy the podcast. So as a group, our goal here is that we want to give well owners direct targeted information and advice so they have a place to go and they can understand why their well is important, understand how to care for it, and protect them from any risks that may occur. And then I just want to point out some upcoming events. Both Steve and I will be presenting at the NEHA annual conference in Pittsburgh coming up in July 15th through 18th. So if you're out at NEHA, look Steve and I up. We would love to know get to know faces as well as names that like to join our webinars. Our next monthly webinar will be on the impacts of drought and flooding on private wells, and that will be August 27th. And then in May 2025, we are going to have another in-person private well conference. And so now it is time to go into our questions and answers. We received a lot of questions in advance, so we'll try to answer as many as possible that we can today. If it's anything that's specific to your state or your state rules, we don't answer those on our webinars, but feel free to send us an email at info@privatewellclass.org, and we would be happy to help put you in contact with the people that can help answer those questions. And again, any questions that you have during this time, put those in the webinar question box. Katie is tracking those. And after we go through the questions we got in advance, we'll go over today's questions as well. And then just again, another thank you to Jim Starbird for helping us out with his expertise today. So Jim, now we will go into the questions. I will start off. I'll give my 2 cents and then feel free to add in anything you feel that either I've missed or you feel is important. So the question is what are some best management practices to communicate to guests in short-term rentals, Airbnb, Vrbo, that are renting homes with septic systems? I personally love using short-term rentals. I've done a couple family vacations now where we've used that. And I've actually, I can't remember if it was one of the homes we stayed at or if it was a restaurant that I stopped at. And I took the picture of the sign, but I couldn't find it. So I found this one online. But I think these signs are a great way because not only does it target your guests, but anyone that, whether it's cleaning staff that comes in after it's been used, it just is a nice reminder to everyone that, don't put other things down the toilet, only use the toilet paper that's provided and bodily fluids. Don't put anything else down. I go back to the situation I had where the babysitter didn't have any experience with the septic system. So you want to make it as evident as possible to people that, take care of our septic system. So by having something that's visible, I think is really important, as well as, whenever you put your description online, make sure that you put in there that there's a septic system, rules must be followed, or there will be, fees attached or something like that. So I think that is my best practice would be to have something visible for people to see. Jim, do you have any comments?
It looks like he's unmuted, but he's not saying anything. So,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll move on to the next question then. Uh, so, are there any studies on tank outlet filters concerning maintenance or effectiveness of different types? Jim, do you have um, any input on anything that's new with tank outlet filters? Well, unfortunately, this question was for Jim because I am not aware of any of the studies. So while Jim works on his microphone, I will um, move on to the next question. So, how does one get their septic system inspected? Do they check for leaks, which could be impacting well water? So, one thing that you can do to get your septic system inspected is you can contact a sewage contractor and have them come out and do the inspection. You can also contact your local health department. They may be willing to come out and check on it. And you can even contact your local RCAP and see if they could come out and do an assessment. So those are ways that you can get it inspected, and looking for not only leaks, but they'll also just check the system over in general and make sure that they don't find anything um, that could be potentially impacting your well water. Jim, do you want to try talking again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We
there
can
we
hear you.
go. There you
Wonderful.
are.
I have no idea what's different now than before.
Well, we're glad we can hear you now.
Okay, which question am I trying to answer now?
Um, so, do you have any comments on um, so for getting your septic system inspected, I recommended that they either go through a contractor, their local health department, or even have RCAP come and do an assessment. And that not only would they check to make for or check for leaks, but they would also check the system overall to make sure that there weren't any problems that could pot- potentially impact their well water.
Yeah, correct. And another thing is when they get the system pumped, is definitely check both the inlet and the outlet of the septic tanks, and hopefully the D box too. And why they're pumping down to the bottom, seeing the whole inside of the tank and what the condition is inside. If it's deteriorated or something along those lines.
Sure. And then, Jim, do you have anything for? Are there any studies on tank outlet filters concerning maintenance or effectiveness of different types?
Studies, no, I've seen them work pretty efficiently. However, sometimes the filter fills up before the tank is full of solid. So sometimes that filter has to be maintained more often than you have to pump the septic tank. And so if that's not maintained, you could, theoretically get a clog and a flow back into the house or other ways if, just because of the filter. So it's a great thing because it keeps any of the solids from going over into the field. But at the same time, it almost needs to be maintained sometimes more often than the pumping of the tank. So, if a homeowner can do it themselves, it's a positive, if you will.
It's definitely worth the extra headache of having to check it more often.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next question, how do I find out what kind of system was put in by prior owners? Um, Jim, I'll start off with this one. It, it really depends on where you live. At the health department I worked in, we actually had all of our septic system records dating back to 1970. So people would come in and we would be able to pull the septic file, and we would have drawings and notes from the contractor. And so we had, you know, a great system. Um, I can't remember what state it was. I think it was North Carolina. I was working with someone through the hotline, and the health department shredded all the records that were older than 5 years old. So there was no way for them to find out what kind of system they had, through the health department. So in case like that, you're going to have someone come out and do an inspection and look over the system and try and figure out and piece together what kind of system you have. Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you kind of covered it. Whether you have to figure out whatever the authority is in your area. Right? Here in Massachusetts, we do it by town, but a lot of the country does it by county. And check the records there, or if somehow who the engineer was or installer, maybe they'll have the records too. But usually
Sure.
the regulatory agency is the one. That's pretty quick destruction of records, 5 years, and to keep up
Yeah,
with
I,
and to keep up with those records of every 5 years destroying them. It's pretty unique.
I was quite shocked with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Every year that we have this, people always ask questions about additives. So, Jim, I'll let you put in your 2 cents and then I'll go over what we have on the Help Center for it.
Yeah, I mean, everything I have seen on the normal ones, and I'm not going to use manufacturer names being, federally funded, but normally in a normal septic sense, really not needed. I've seen them in some instances to regenerate septic fields, and that was like in addition to aerating the system, is to kind of repair it with a special blend of bacteria, and some of those are approved in the states I work in. But in general, for general maintenance, it's not needed, if you will.
Sure. And that's our stance too, is it's if your system's working properly, you're not going to need to use any additives. And so we actually have an article on our help desk specifically about additives. And the one thing that I'd like to point out is in this article, I actually have a link to a document where it goes over the research of what's been done and what the findings were. So if you want to check that out, we have the link there that Katie will put into the chat so you can see for yourself what the research is saying. So concerns of septic impacting a private well, what to look for, types of septic systems. So, we've already mentioned that a septic system can have an impact on a private well if the septic system isn't working correctly, if it wasn't installed correctly. Any well that is downflow, in the sense of groundwater, is, you know, potentially at risk for being contaminated. You want to make sure that you're taking care of your septic tank so it's not having problems, to do your best to protect your well water. For the different types of septic systems, um, like I said, choosing the type, choosing the design is very specific to your home. So you're going to want to make sure that you work with that regulatory agency in your area and your contractor to make sure that you're picking the right kind of system for your property to prevent any kind of contamination to your well or your neighbor's wells. Jim, you have anything to add?
Yeah, in my experience working with private and public water, usually quick spikes in nitrate from one water test to the next, we should be doing yearly. Usually you can trace it back to something going on with either your septic or your neighbor's septic. I mean, I've worked with a public water system that had very high nitrate and actually went to weekly bacterial monitoring. Never had a total coliform problem, but the nitrate, like I said, went all the way up to about 30. And it was because of a failed septic system. And I've seen that 2 or 3 other occasions, if you will. So usually nitrate is the number one thing you see, and sometimes even before you notice surfacing of the water or anything along those lines.
Sure. It looks like I repeated a question, so we'll skip that one and go down to typically about how far from the septic tank is the drain field? Any suggestion on who local government offices to contact to see exactly where the drain field is? Jim, I'll let you field this one.
Well, in all the states I work with, for private wells, it's 100 feet from the edge of any edge of the drain field to the well. How you'd find that out again would be, get basically an as-built plan of your septic system, most likely, and or a well permit that would show where those distances are, if you will. But it's 100 feet for most of the things I've seen from the leach field itself. The components can be upwards of 50 feet.
Sure. And then, um, you know, just make sure that if you have a specific question and you're not sure who your local government office is, feel free to reach out to us and we would be happy to try and help you find the specific office that you need to talk to, and we'll help with that. Okay, so the next question is, I've kind of combined some questions here. Should I avoid planting anything in the drain field area? What is your opinion for someone constructing a workshop poured concrete floor on top of the septic drain field? And what impact can be expected on the operation of this system? We've already kind of gone over this, but I just wanted to emphasize that you want to keep your drain field as clear of things as possible. You don't want to put your garden on top of the drain field. Just put grass. Don't put trees nearby, or any kind of shrub that may have an intense root system. If you get roots that infiltrate uh, your pipes, it's going to ruin your system. I gave the example of where the club built their kitchen on top of their septic field, and it ruined it. So if you are going to build something as big as a workshop and have something as heavy as a concrete floor, number one, you're not going to be able to inspect the area or make any changes or repair anything if you have concrete over the top. And then it's also going to compact the soil with that heavy weight, and it's just not going to work properly. Jim, you have anything else to add to that?
I was saying too, if you build a non-porous thing, there's no oxygen. There's no way to breathe, even, and it's an anaerobic system, but there's still oxygen that gets in there through the vent of your house going into the system. The only systems I've ever seen at a drain field, I've seen them sometimes in commercial settings that they can have tarred over, but again, there's extra vents and other ways to get oxygen into the system that you won't have in a normal septic system at your house. So, unless it was designed to have something like that on top of it, it should really look like a soccer field, if you will, without a goal.
Exactly. So our next question, is a French drain and a septic system basically the same thing? Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are not the same thing. It's my understanding that a French drain is put in to help with flooding issues and to pull extra rainwater away from your home or your driveway to lessen flooding. So it is not there to treat wastewater, it is there to handle extra water, where your septic system is there to treat the wastewater and make it where it is safe for it to go back into the environment. Am I understanding that correctly, Jim?
Yes, yeah. It's French drains really to keep your foundation from getting water in it. Basically stormwater management. And the septic systems, just for your wastewater going out. One thing about that is if your French drain drains to an area, you don't want it to drain towards your leach field or even be tied into your septic system, which, believe it or not, has happened from time to time. Even same thing with gutters too. Sometimes they have gutter systems that go into almost like a French drainage system where do those pipes go? You hope you don't go into your septic system because you just put adding way too much water into a system that's not made for, storm water, if you will. But yeah, that's my understanding that, French drain is really about keeping the foundation water free.
Sure. And then I'll let you answer, does the drought have an impact on septic systems?
I would say, yeah, I mean, it makes this, the less saturated ground, so it actually kind of works a little bit better. I will say, if you have a well and a septic system during a drought, your well might be pulling from further away because the aquifer is not as saturated. At that point, you might be picking up contaminants that you never had in your well before because, again, you're pulling from further away to get the water into the well, so you might be catching bad areas that normally aren't in your well. So it's more of an impact on your well system, but it actually, being dry, it actually kind of makes it a little bit better on the leach field for flow in. Because I've, seen instances when we have just a lot of complete rain over and over and over again, and the leach field almost gets overdone from just rainwater. Then you're putting septic water on top of it, so it actually sometimes makes it work a little bit better.
Sure. Okay. And then the next question, I know we've already answered this in the webinar, but we get asked this question so frequently that I think it's always good to repeat and repeat so everyone can hear it. So, how often should you have your septic pumped out? Again, I show you this figure where, it does just a generalized calculation, the tank size in gallons compared to the number of people, and then you can come down and see. So, if you have a tank size of 1,500 with 4 people, you're at 4.2 years. I know at the health department I worked at, we always did the generalization of every 3 to 5 years. But I feel it's best if you work with um, whether it's a sewage contractor, you do it yourself, um, look at your own individual system to verify what needs you have for pumping it out. Jim, what do you normally tell people when they ask how often they should get their septic system pumped?
Well, one caveat is if you do have a garbage disposal in your house, then you should do it more often than what we're recommending because you're putting a lot of extra solids down there that aren't needed. And if you're in some states, it's banned, but believe it or not, it still happens. I always like to say too, if you have a trusted pumper, and say you're every 3 years, every 2 years, could ask them, could I go another year? Could I go another 2 years without being pumping? And if it's a trustworthy pumper and nothing's changed in your household, you don't have more people moving in or anything like that, then you might be able to just kind of ride it with that, if you will. So if you have someone a professional that you trust and will give you the honest equation when he comes, then you might want to go like that too.
Sure. Okay, so our next question is, we are looking at buying rural property and would be first-time septic system owners. Anything we need to know when evaluating a septic system on a potential property or priority task for when we first take ownership? So the first thing that I feel that needs to be pointed out is before you buy a property with a septic system, even if the seller won't cover the cost, have it evaluated. Contact a trusted contractor. If you don't know of one, contact your local health authority, whoever oversees the regulations. A lot of them will have a list of contractors that are either licensed through that state or county, and ask your neighbors, find some reputable names, and have one of them come out and evaluate the system. The last thing you want to do is buy a new home and find out that the septic system has failed on it, and that's the reason they're moving. So you want to make sure you take that first step before signing on the dotted line, so you know if there's a problem, then you can negotiate that price prior to the final sell. If everything comes back, good, then I do recommend that you look at the new home buyer's guide to septic systems from the Septic Smart resources. And that'll be a good overview to get you started. And then find people that you can talk to, find who your local people are. If you get that trusted contractor, I know working at the health department, those guys were a wealth of knowledge, and they don't really get the credit they deserve for the job that they do. So I do recommend that you talk to your locals and find out what information they have available for you as well. Jim, what do you say to first-time septic system owners?
Yeah, the same as, definitely want an inspection by a professional. In 2 of the 3 states I work with, it's actually law, so it has to happen for it's required, and then we have licensure, etc. But if you're in a state that doesn't have such a situation, when you hire that professional, you really want to make sure they are digging up that system and looking in each component. Digging up that D box and looking at, in hopefully the front end rear manholes, digging down that D box and actually seeing what's going on inside there. Is the water draining into the field, or is the field not being able to drain in? And the biggest expense is going to be a new field. So you want to definitely make sure when you have that evaluation, the lawn is getting dug up if they don't have risers to the surface, which homes don't. The inspection should be pretty intrusive, and should require some grass seed when you're done. If you don't see the lawn dug up and it's not manholes, then you really didn't get a quality inspection of the components of the system. You're just kind of looking what's on the surface.
Good advice. Okay, for the next question, Jim, I'll let you answer this one. What is the new technology for poor soil areas? Are you familiar with any new technologies that are coming out?
Well, there's tons of new ones. Again, we can't mention manufacturer names, but there's ones to make leach fields that don't have the clearance to the ground to get clearance to groundwater, to get those shortened up, those requirements to make the leach field smaller. If the soil you can mound up and bring in better soil if you have poor soil above it. So there's so many technologies, it's tough to answer them all in one, but there's where there's a way, there's a will, there's a way. There's some way to fit a new system in a lot that wasn't previously made for the standards that we have today. So it could cost more, and there's more maintenance usually with these new technologies. We call innovative alternative up here in Massachusetts, but usually there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. Now we've kind of already gone over what are your thoughts of sink garbage disposal with the septic system. It's really just not a good idea. It just adds so much to the system that for my personal opinion would be you would be better off putting in a way to compost your leftover food as a way of disposing of it compared to putting it down the garbage disposal. Jim, do you have any other things to say about garbage disposals that we haven't already gone over?
No, it's really not a good idea. In some states just outright don't allow them. Other states allow them, but you have to double the size of your septic tank to
cover for
accept the extra solids that you're putting in from the garbage disposal, which most people aren't willing to put in a double upgrade from a 1,000 to a 2,000 gallon septic tank just because they want a garbage disposal. It's usually just not a good idea in a situation, but we do still see them out there when I'm out doing assessments. They're still there.
Sure. Okay, Jim, I'll have you answer this question. How does venting off gas flow work from a typical, I'm assuming it's supposed to be home septic system, and why might I smell sewer gas a few times a year in my basement?
In your basement, I'm not sure. Usually, sometimes when people get a whiff near their vent in the summertime. How it works on the off gas is really on the plumbing ventilation of your house. Sometimes you'll have a vent coming out at your leach field or your septic tank sometimes too, or if you have a pump chamber, there's usually one anyways for the air behind the water. And also the vent coming out of your house, just like the plumbing in your house works. When you flush your toilet or the sink, again, there's air behind the waste to bring it into that waste sign. So that air exchange through the vent of your top of your house and then through the system is usually how it off gases. Now, how you smell it in the basement, couldn't tell you on the top of that because there shouldn't be any openings for any sewer gas to escape in your basement. Sewer gas is flammable, so you really don't want to have sewer gas around, any kind of electrical switches or anything like that. It is, flammable if it would be built up, the methane gas. But I couldn't answer why you smell it in your basement.
Is it
If you have, the one thing I did notice when I used to do restaurant inspections, if you have a floor drain in your basement and you don't normally put any water down it, the chase in there could get dried out, and then not the chase,
the P
the
trap?
elbow, I forget what they call it, the trap. Yeah, that can get dried out, and then from there, and the soil gases can come in through that vent. So you might want to dump a gallon of water down that floor drain if you happen to see the floor drain. I used to see it a lot in bathrooms and restaurants. They come in with a mopping but there's not enough water to keep that trap, full of water. Dump a gallon of water down there, and half hour later the soil gas goes away. So that might be, if you have something like that. It's the only guess I have though for the soil gas in the basement.
That was exactly my guess too for sewer gas in the basement, was that they have some kind of floor drain that either they forget about or they don't know about, and that might be causing the problem. And then, Jim, just the last question is, what DIY maintenance or monitoring activities can I perform to extend the life of my system? I've kind of gone over my maintenance suggestions, so I will let you field this and see if there's anything that you want to add that we haven't already covered today.
But I think we covered it all. It's how often you pump it, when it needs it, and what you're putting down it, really. As far as what's under the homeowner's control. Once it's installed, it's all about the maintenance at that point. So I think that's, between those two, I think that's what they're looking for. And just kind of keep an eye out at that leach field for any abnormalities. All of a sudden you got a really nice lawn there and you don't fertilize, you might have a problem, or odors or ponding. But usually it's vegetation that you'll see first at the leach field, and usually that's where the system fails, if it doesn't have like a pump or something along those lines. But usually the problem is the leach field. Finally the leach field fails, and that's what fills the system. A concrete septic tank, usually not the problem other than the pipes coming out.
Right. Okay, well, that answers all of our advanced questions. So we will now move on to today's questions. So I just want to take this time to thank everyone for attending. And then I want to do a special thanks again to our guest, Jim Starbird. So Jim, I really do appreciate you helping me with this today.
No problem.
So now we are going to switch over to our questions that Katie has been compiling for us. Let me get this where. Katie, can you see the questions?
Yeah, it looks great from my end, Sally.
Great. Okay, so is a sand filter considered advanced treatment? Jim, do you know if it's considered advanced treatment or is it just considered the final treatment? I do not know.
Where I work, well, it depends if this is a recirculating sand filter or just the sand filter, like final treatment sand filter into the ground, bottomless sand filter, basically. Um, Both of them usually are used for some sort of advanced treatment. The recirculating one actually spent the morning at a recirculating sand filter. That's used for denitrification, because the system is loaded. It's in a zone 2 of a public water system. But yeah, and around here it's considered advanced treatment.
Okay. So then our second question, I recently had a realtor get upset with me because we required the tank to be pumped when doing an real estate inspection for sale. She said it takes out all the bacteria you are needing to keep the tank healthy. I simply told her this was our regulations, but is there a better response I should have used? Um, uh, I guess you could look at it one of two ways. She can't fight that, it's your regulations and that's what you're going to do. But you could explain that, you know, the human body produces so many bacteria on a daily basis that pumping the tank actually keeps it healthier than just to not pump it. You're not going to get every single piece out whenever you pump it, so you're still going to have plenty of material left over. And so that's the way you keep the tank healthy is by pumping it out regularly. Jim, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think that'd be it. I mean, I think saying it's a regulation is, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? One of the states I work in, it's required. They do an inspection, and after the inspection, it's pumped. Another one doesn't require it, but those are the rules. I mean, there's not really much you can do about
Yeah,
it. You know?
exactly.
Especially if it seems like it's a regulator that asks the questions.
Yeah, if
As a
you're the
former
regulator,
regulator, I
you
just
set the
say, look, I don't
rules.
make the rules. I just enforce them. I didn't write them.
Okay, so the next question is you mentioned no paint. What about cleaning brushes or rollers? Um, if it's a small amount, if you have to do what you need to clean your brushes, but do not dispose of paint whenever you're done with a gallon. Don't dump it down, and I would keep any kind of cleaning to a minimum as well. You might even use a bucket and you know um, clean the brushes in the bucket and then let it air dry where you could then put it into any leftover paint you could put into the trash that way. Um, Jim, what are your thoughts on cleaning brushes and rollers?
I mean, if it's for household use, we paint the room once every 10 years. I don't think it's a big deal. If you are running a painting company out of your house, then I might, reconsider if it's, everyday commercial use. It depends on how much we're talking here. If it's just, like I said, we paint the rooms every 10 years, then I don't really think it would be a big deal. And it's just the brushes. But yeah, I wouldn't do it. Run a professional painting company out of there, and you're doing 10 or 20 brushes every day.
Exactly. Um, do you have anything to add? I know we've already kind of answered the additive questions. Um, do you have anything that you want to add for additives that are useful?
The only additives I've seen that are approved are for remediating of leach fields, if you will, a biomat that's formed, and there is some technologies that are approved in some of the states that we work in that will have like an enzyme and other additives put in along with aeration to kind of break that biomat up, if you will, if it's a certain kind. If it's not like, silt formations or something like that. But other than that, no. I mean, maybe if it's a seasonal place that you're renting out and you want to kind of kickstart it. But other than that, I can't really see the name for a normal household that you're not renting out and it's just normal family. I just don't see the need for it. There's plenty of we seed it pretty well with our probiotics from our own bodies, if you will.
Sure. Do I need to pump a dry well, 1,000-gallon tank used for laundry, dishwasher, sink, and water softener backwash? I'll let you field that one, Jim.
I would say no. I don't see any solids coming in from that other than, I don't know, maybe a little bit of lint from the laundry.
The laundry.
Yeah, but no, other than
Right.
that, I don't see a need for it because there wouldn't be any solids building up, toilet paper and feces, etc., like in a regular septic system, greases and stuff. This is
I,
just
I
detergents
would
and
say
waters, really.
the dishwasher is the only thing that has me a little concerned, depending,
Mm.
how well they scrape their dishes and, are they doing, I know I have two aunts that they thoroughly wash their dishes before they put it into the dishwasher. So depending what type of person you are, that's the only thing that I could see being a potential problem there. I'm curious why the dishwasher wasn't hooked to the septic system, why it went to the dry well.
Yeah, that's new too. Regular sinks too, usually.
Yeah, so that's my only questions
Yeah.
that I have on that
The
one.
states I work in, we came into laundry, it's just the water softener that can go into that. So,
Right. Uh, so what are common methods to prevent the septic system from freezing in winter months? Being from Massachusetts, Jim, I will let you handle this one.
well, usually under normal circumstances, and we don't have like a minus 40-degree like spell or something like that, usually the heat of the water coming out of the home is usually enough. I mean, septic tanks aren't buried that low because of the biological heat coming out of the house. Now, if you're, a place that closes down, say you're a summer home and all winter it stays closed, then it might be a bit of a problem. But again, there won't be any water going through your pipes at that point, and I don't really think a septic tank would crack under the freeze of it. It's more the pipes. But usually, the biologics of living are good enough to keep it from freezing. It's more the water lines coming into the home that seem to be more of a problem.
Okay, so number 7 here looks like a follow-up. The question was, what separation should there be between the drain field and the septic tank, not the separation between that and a well?
Oh,
So,
well, that really depends on what the design is and where you have to bring it to get to the field. I mean, sometimes they're, you know, 10, 20 feet away. Sometimes they need to get, piped to a better area for disposal. Sometimes it's pumped up to that. So it all depends on where that field has been designed to put in, whether, the good soil was to put in, etc. So there's no rhyme or reason of, how far it should be.
yeah, there's no regulations that require a certain setback like it does because the setbacks are to protect the source water. So, you don't want to have your septic system too close to your well because it could infiltrate the water that's coming up your well. So, but going from the septic tank to the drain field, you don't have to worry about that kind of separation. So the next one is, I was told to add yeast once a month to maintain the system. What do you think?
I don't see a need. I mean, I guess the enzymes in the yeast is what you're trying to get to, but I haven't heard of that working for anything for normal use, if you will. Like I said,
Right.
there's some additives to regenerate leach fields, but the common everyday septic system without having a problem, I don't see a need for yeast.
Okay. And then, so for properties with older as-builts, how do you locate all septic components on site to establish proper setbacks and prevent driving over, et cetera, establish the extent of the drain field? So in my experience, there was a situation where it was an apartment complex and they had built multiple homes, but they were tiny little, more like little cabins, and they were all connected through a cluster system. And no one knew anything about it. It was built prior to when they were keeping the records. And so there was a group of 4 or 5 of us that went out, and we had a shovel and a prod, and we went through and we or probe, and we went through the entire yard, probing every couple of feet until we hit something hard, and then we took turns shoveling, and we, you know, traced out as much as we could by hand to establish where everything was. We were able to identify the drain field very easily because it was a failing system. So we had that, um, green lush grass when it came to the drain field. Uh, that was very labor intensive. So Jim, do you have any other suggestions other than going out and digging it up and seeing what you can find?
Other than the prod, maybe a metal detector if there's metal components like the manholes. Most likely they don't have any tracer tape on any of the any of the plastic pipes. Well, maybe it's old cast iron, depending on the age of the system.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, that's really the only way is the prod, and then prod to each end of the septic tank to try to figure out where that begins and ends. And yeah, it's a pretty intensive search if you have nothing to go on other than a pipe going out of the foundation.
Exactly. So we use vinegar and baking soda as a regular household cleaner. Are these good choices? Any other suggestions for septic safe household cleaners other than bleach? I would say the more natural that you can use, the better. I don't think vinegar and baking soda would cause any issues. Jim, have you run into any problems with using something like that?
I can't imagine so. I mean, the only thing I could see that doing is changing the pH a little bit, but I see that all leveling out with everything else. Yeah, I mean, I would say, for what I'm saying, that would probably be a great option. More natural, the better. Try to stay away from like quaternary ammonia type products. I understand
Exactly.
because that stuff, like a chlorine, after it kills, it kind of dissipates, if you will. Quaternary ammonia just keeps killing. There's no, so bleach would probably be like you don't really want to dump too much bleach down there, but if you're going to use something, that'd be a little bit much better than like a quaternary ammonia. Like I said, it just has a killing power that just continues on as a bleach kind of wears out after it oxidizes enough things.
I would say I've actually had experience where quaternary ammonia actually ruined a school. It was a school out in the country on a septic, and the salesman came through and convinced all the schools to switch over to quaternary ammonia. And about 2 months later, um, we started getting complaints that when people were going to the sporting events, that it smelled like, um, the sewer gas. And it turned out that it was the kitchen using the quaternary ammonia had destroyed the septic system, and they ended up actually closing that school and um, stopped using the facility because they didn't want to go through the expense of putting in a new septic system. So they opted to build onto another school and stopped using that school. So I
Wow.
definitely do not recommend quaternary ammonia when it comes to a septic system.
Well,
Okay,
it's good for
Katie?
surface contamination in a food establishment, but not for the septics.
Exactly. Katie, is that all of our questions for today?
Yep, those are all the questions that we've received today.
Okay. Well, again, I really want to thank you, Jim, for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's always great to have someone else that is in the field and has those stories and knowledge to bring to the table. So I really appreciate you being on today. If you are looking for CEs for NEHA or the Illinois LEHP, please email us at info@privatewellclass.org. And if you have any additional questions or comments or concerns, again, don't hesitate to email us. We look forward to all of the comments that we get after a session like this. And we are always here to help you with your private well and septic system questions. If we can't answer them, then we will do our best to find someone like Jim who may have a little more knowledge than us. We'll try and find someone that can help you. So if we don't have any other questions, thank you so much for attending. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.